السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمد ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. أما بعد، رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. عن أبي موسى الأشعري رضي الله عنه قال: قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: إن مثل ما بعثني الله به من الهدى والعلم كمثل غيث أصاب أرضا فكانت منها طائفة طيبة قبلت الماء فانبتت الكلأ والعشب الكثير، وكان منها أجادب أمسكت الماء فنفع الله بها الناس فشربوا منها وسقوا وزرعوا. إلى آخر الحديث. In this chapter of protecting and preserving the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, first of all, Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, he brought two ahadith to show us the importance of adhering to the Sunnah. One of those ahadith was about grabbing onto the Sunnah with one's teeth, right? The molars. Then the Prophet ﷺ, then Imam Nawawi rahimahullah brought two ahadith to show us the warning in not adhering to the hadith. And one of those ahadith was that person who told the Prophet ﷺ, I'm not eating with my right hand. Right? And then the Prophet ﷺ, Imam Nawawi rahimahullah brought a hadith to show how particular the Prophet ﷺ was in making sure that his sunnah is established and understood. And we learned this from the hadith of where the Prophet ﷺ straightened the lines before the prayer. And then we also learned last night how the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, not only does it save us spiritually, but it is also, the Prophet ﷺ sunnah also serves as a code of physical safety as well, when he instructed the Sahaba to extinguish all of the fires before they go to sleep at night. Now, so on one side, you have the application of the sunnah in one's life. Yes, this is what the Prophet ﷺ told us. This is what we're going to do. That's it. Then on the other side, you have the importance of a deeper understanding of the dynamics behind the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. A deeper understanding. And not only that, after you've understood the sunnah and protected and you try to preserve the sunnah, to make sure other people benefit from that as well. And this is what is being reflected in this hadith. And before I get into the translation, you have to understand that the Prophet ﷺ left us with two things: the Quran and the Sunnah. And he fulfilled the right of bringing the message to us. And over 100,000 Sahaba attested to this by saying that yes, you have fulfilled the spread of the message. As far as the recipients are concerned, those who receive the message, the Prophet ﷺ has given a beautiful example comparing those who, and categorizing those who receive the message of the religion or the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is something that the Prophet ﷺ did ever so beautifully in many ahadith, where he shared with them examples of things that they can relate to, which serves as a lesson for us that in our path of benefiting others or advising others, it is very important, even as we share the examples of the Prophet ﷺ, in other aspects of deen, we should try to present deen in a way that others can relate. Whether it's through examples, whether it's through a person's personal experience, whatever it is, so that it can, with the intention of allowing things to click for someone else. Now the Prophet ﷺ gave an example, and he said the example of what Allah, the guidance and knowledge that Allah sent with me to you. The example of that knowledge is the example of ghayth, a pouring rain. Now there's another word that's used for rain, and that is matar. Okay? Ghayth is unlike matar. Matar could mean a sprinkle. Ghayth means when you get drenched. Okay? And ghayth is that rain that comes after a drought. When people are thirsty. When they are in a situation of drought. And when that drenching rain comes. That is called ghayth. Like on the West Coast. With all of the fires they're dealing with. The gushing rain that pours in that situation would be called ghayth. Okay? Asaba ardan. It is the example of that gushing rain that falls upon the earth. Now, not just in this hadith, but throughout the Quran and throughout the Sunnah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam have compared the knowledge of deen and guidance to that of rain and water. Even the words that are used, the verb, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when talking about rain, He says, وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً طَهُورًا. We have sent down pure water from the sky. But at the same time, when Allah talks about revelation, إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَاهُ. So the same verb that is used to describe the falling of rain is the same that is used to describe and define the descent of revelation upon earth. And it compares to just as water, when it hits the earth, it brings it to life. It brings out vegetation. It changes the scene. Likewise, when revelation is a part of the picture, it flips the landscape. It changes the entire scene. Now, the Prophet ﷺ categorized people into two groups. Okay? Now, in the first group, the Prophet ﷺ said, فَكَانَتْ مِنْهَا طَائِفَةٌ طَيِّبَةٌ. There is one group, one type of land that is طيبة, that is the best, it is pure. قَبِلَتِ الْمَاءَ فَانْبَتَتِ الْكَلَأَ وَالْعُشْبَ الْكَثِيرِ. It absorbs the water. قَبِلَتِ الْمَاءَ. It absorbs that water. And then فَانْبَتَتِ الْكَلَأَ وَالْعُشْبَ الْكَثِيرِ. It allows that water to flourish in that soil, and as a result of that, it gives back vegetation and greenery. Okay? Now, so this land, it absorbed the water. It benefited from that water itself, and then it transformed it. It didn't give water back. It transformed that water into vegetation. Okay? It transformed it into something totally different. Then the Prophet ﷺ explains that there is another piece of land, وَكَانَ مِنْهَا أَجَادِبْ أَمْسَكَتِ الْمَاءِ. It held that water, فَنَفَعَ اللَّهُ بِهَا النَّاسِ. And through the holding of that water, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed people to benefit from that. فَشَرِبُوا مِنْهَا وَسَقَوْا وَزَرَعُوا. People drank from it. People, they quenched the thirst of their animals and others, and they used it for irrigation. Okay? Now, and then the Prophet ﷺ mentions a third piece of land, that it falls on a sandy land. قِيعَانْ لَا تُمْسِكُ مَاءً وَلَا تُنْبِتُ كَلَأً. It didn't retain or absorb the water, and neither did it give anything back. Okay? Now, inshallah we'll expand on this tomorrow, but through this example, and then the Prophet ﷺ expands on it himself, that these three lands reflect on three categories of people. One group of people who absorbed the knowledge and transformed it. Another group of people who absorbed this knowledge or held on to this knowledge and not transformed it, but transferred it. And then the third, who did not gain anything and did not benefit anyone. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be the protectors of the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.